Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today on Face Off, I asked the question, which previous Doctor would you have liked Jodie Whittaker to have regenerated into? If you could have picked a previous Doctor for Jodie Whittaker to have regenerated into. And the options were Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, Paul McGann, Sylvester McCoy, and I'm glad it was David Tennant. So, me personally, I'm cool with it being Tennant. I would have loved to have seen McGann. That would be my choice. I would love to see McGann come back for like 3 specials. He deserves it. Anytime I see McGann in this role, he is great. I enjoyed him in the TV movie. I enjoyed him in Night of the Doctor. I liked him the brief time we got in in Power of the Doctor. And I enjoyed the 8th Doctor version of Shada. I've seen the Flash animation for that. I've never heard any of his Big Finish. It's on my to-do list. I really want to hear Chimes of Midnight if anyone's looking at a Christmas list or anything. But I really like Paul McGann. I really like the 8th Doctor. So I would love for him to come back and get more screen time. Other than that, I am cool with them bringing Tennant back. I get it. Russell's back. Russell and Tennant get on well. They're bringing back Catherine Tate. They're giving us a little flavor of 2008 for 3 specials next year. It's the anniversary year. It makes sense to do something like that. So I'm cool with it being Tennant. I'd been fine if it had been one of the other previous Doctors like McCoy as well. But Tennant makes sense. But if I could have picked, I would have said McGann. Let's see what you guys had to say about it. 42% of these 5 options said McGann. 42% said Paul McGann. It's just not surprising. I did expect McGann to run away with the vote, and he does get not quite half, but a good chunk of it here. He did get 42%. In second place, with a strong 29%, was I'm glad it was David Tennant. So 29%, just under a third, were glad it was David Tennant. 12% said Peter Capaldi. 9% said Matt Smith. And Sylvester McCoy, considering his age and being a classic Doctor, got a respectable 8%. Matter of fact, I was watching this list over the past week or so, and Smith and McCoy were going back and forth. They were one was usually about a point ahead of the other, and they kept flipping a bit. But Smith got 9%, McCoy got 8%, and Capaldi got 12%, with Tennant getting 29% and McGann getting 42%. Let's look at some of the comments. Thomas says, regenerating into Tennant was the most harmful for his original run, considering he got such a big send-off in End of Time Part 2. If she had to regenerate into a previous Doctor, I think McGann would have worked best. Alisticius? I don't know how you pronounce that. But I've seen you on the channel a lot lately. I'm very glad to have you. Said, sad there's no option for Colin Baker. Would have loved to see a rendezvous with Perry and see them argue about each other's weight like they did in Revelation of the Daleks. Out of your options, I do like the fact that Tennant was chosen because it will make for a very interesting tone setting in advance of Gadawa's tenure, which I look forward to with much anticipation. Nakayaku said, I am not a fan of regenerating into any previous Doctors at all, but if it has to be, McGann has the least screen time and there should be more of him. Henry Andrews says Capaldi. Not just because I like him a lot, but because it can make sense. I can even imagine the synopsis for the specials. And he goes on to talk about, since that was the previous one, about him regressing backwards. And does actually a pretty good job outlining it. He goes, and then we could bring back Tennant, Tate, Tennant, Smith, Capaldi, maybe 1 or 2 others being sort of a bridge to 14, due to something going wrong where the regeneration is messing up, before finally there is a massive sequence in which, using CGI from David Bradley, we go through all 13 faces before finally settling on Shooty, similar to that scene in Power of the Doctor. He goes, darn you Chibnall for messing with the titles. Paul Bailey says, after listening to a few of Paul McGann's Big Finish, I want Paul to have more screen time as the Doctor. Hopefully a spin-off with his Doctor, but Paul is an amazing Doctor in Big Finish, and his Doctor has moved into my top 10 Doctors. And Cat-Eye Corey says, Paul McGann easily, and you can bring in whatever Big Finish companion he had, a big crossover between Big Finish and TV. I'd like that. I'd love to see Bernice Summerfield or Charlie. LOZ Hallett 1 says, I'd love to have seen Paul McGann stretch his legs and have a few episodes, but feel because of the state of the show post-Chibnall Jodie, a safer pair of hands would be more sensible to stabilize things, hopefully before the next era. And I'm pretty sure the BBC feels the same way. Richard English says Patrick Troughton, whereas upon Jamie and Zoe turn up and the former says, oh, doctor, we're still in the land of fiction. Shamrock Particle says Hartnell and make it a recursive time loop. Clever. I see what you did there. Could have been Capaldi so they can retcon the era, or Tennant, but he's the 14th officially, so that won't be used to erase everyone since him either. They're not going to erase Whittaker. They're not going to. I know a lot of you guys would love for them to somehow write Whittaker out of the canon, but there's no way they would do that. The blowback they would get from that, there's no way. No way they would ever do that. Bananas Are Good says, gotta be Paul, I guess. Give him some more screen time. Enough said. Who am I? Far King Huge says Peter Capaldi because it would be the perfect excuse to have the 12th Doctor to wake up from a 5-year fever dream, thus wiping the Chibnall Whittaker era out of existence. There's no way they will ever do that. Phil Owens says Peter Cushing. Let's really mess with the canon. And I said, wouldn't be the first time Cushing was brought back from the dead. And then Shamrock Particle says, or he could change it to Philip Hinchcliffe as he's one of the Morbius images. That'd be interesting. Rob the Old Mongoose says the 8th Doctor would have worked better for me. Don Moore says McGann for the obvious lack of screen time reasons. Tennant makes by far the most sense though. And I think that's the shortest post I've ever seen Don make. Alice Collins, who is also one of my patrons, who I very much am grateful for and appreciative to, says, would have preferred she regenerated into Shooty, to be honest. Joshua says, I'm sorry, but it should have been Shooty Gatwa. I have an issue with the whole degeneration thing. I'm waiting to see the explanation for it. Plus, I feel like the bit with the curator established a precedent for that, because I do consider the curator a future Doctor, a way off future Doctor. So that it works for me. Ryan Carrick says, I don't hate Tennant like some, but I find him grating without Donna. But I don't really understand the hype behind him. I'd prefer McGann because he never really got a chance on TV. I understand he was probably chosen to revitalize the show long term, but I'm more excited for the 15th Doctor for the 60th specials. And I said, wouldn't it have been crazy if she'd regenerated into Paul? And he said, I would have loved it. Personally, I expected the 3 60th specials to each have a previous Doctor at first. That would be cool. You know, maybe McGann, then Tennant, then Smith, but a bit worried the 60th is going to be a celebration of the Russell T. Davies era rather than the show. And even Cody agreed with that and said, that's what worries me. And Ryan said, glad to know I'm not alone. I'm excited for 15's era, but worried the show will go backwards because BBC hiring Russell seems desperate to me. And then I added, amusingly, Chibs may have given us a better anniversary story with Power of the Doctor. So, a lot of people wanting Paul McGann. A lot of people content with it being David. And several people just wishing that Jodie would have regenerated straight into Shooty and moved on with the next era. So it's interesting to see the different opinions on that. I do hope we get some of Paul, though. Some more screen time on Paul. They have to know we know it. We want it. They have to know. So I do hope we get more of Paul McGann on television for the 60th. I would like to see that. So, if you didn't get a chance to vote in this poll, go ahead and comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Other things to do, click the like button and the subscribe button. And the bell for notifications so you never miss out on another video. I also have a Patreon, and if you like what I do and would like to contribute to what I do, that does help me pay the bills around here with the newer, more expensive apartment. I want to give a shout out to Colin Coney and Stephen Crane, 2 of my top tier patrons. I appreciate their continued support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. You'll find a link to that down in the description below if you'd like to check that out. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you would like to send me. Christmas time's almost here. If there's any Christmas gifts you want to send. A link to my Amazon wish list and my Amazon UK wish list is down there as well. Most importantly, thank you for watching.